Welcome to NFL Daily, where we're all just thinking about what we were doing in January of 2006. That was the last time the Washington Commanders, the Washington franchise, won a playoff game, and they've done it again. I'm here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio for the first time since Tuesday when these fires changed a lot of our lives here in Los Angeles, and I'm happy to be talking football tonight with three of my friends. Patrick Claybon in the studio with me. Nick Shook, as always, on remote from Cleveland, and for the first time ever,
yes,
Kevin Patra coming at you in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio. Welcome,
Yeah.
Kevin. Good to have you.
Beautiful place.
It is a really nice studio, and I know you spent the day here just grinding on the computer, and you're up here for a family wedding, and it's great to see you, my friend.
Yeah. It's great to be here. It's a interesting time to be out in California, but life goes on.
It is an interesting time. We'll put a button in that. We'll see if I get stopped after I enter the evacuation zone after curfew tonight. But it is great to talk about these games, Patrick. We were adding it up. We have 50 years of NFL experience, NFL employee experience between the four of us tonight. So I think we'll be able to make sense of this insane Washington.
Yes, survivors is what we are, and that we'll celebrate the teams that did and look back at some teams that had some chances but did not.
Okay, no more foreplay. Let's go to Tampa Bay, where, yes, we're going to hear from Bram Weinstein at least one more time this season.
You couldn't ask for a better script than this right here. From 37 in the left hash mark. Tyler Rott's the snapper. Tressway will hold. Zane Gonzalez looking to send Washington into the divisional round. Snap good, hold down, kick on its way. It is good! The Cardiac Commanders are the Clutch Commanders. They do it again. We'll see you in Detroit. And Zane Gonzalez kicks in the door and kicks us into the second round of the playoff.
I love it, London Fletcher. He announces like he plays. Man, what a game. Commanders, Buccaneers, saving, frankly, a two-game slate where we just didn't have enough close games. We had a lot of good stories. We set up some great games next week, but we needed a juicy game, and this was it. Jayden Daniels does what he does, which is win the game in the final seconds with a late drive that included a screen pass that for a brief second I thought was going to be a game-changing interception by Yaya Diaby, but it wasn't. It was a completion, like so many of his passes, right on the money, and the Commanders get it done. So much to talk about here, Shooky. Let's start by giving the rookie his flowers, but before diving into what went wrong for the Bucs, who had a tricky fourth quarter. This is a wagon of an offense, and for the Commanders to hold them to 20 points, a lot needed to happen. Self-inflicted wounds and some good plays by the Commanders' defense. But ultimately, on a night where Jayden Daniels throws for 2 touchdowns, he throws the ball 35 times, he runs it 13 times, not that effective, a couple touchdowns, doesn't make any big mistakes. He does it again, and he is the first rookie to win a road playoff game since Russell Wilson did it back in 2012. It is difficult to do.
Yeah, also in that group, Mark Sanchez, but that story was different. This, it was about the big plays in key moments for Jayden Daniels. Yeah, the rushing wasn't very effective, but when they needed a first down late, he was the guy who was able to kind of feel out the defense and then hit the edge and dive across the line to gain for a key first down. He was the guy who was able to bounce back from failing and turning it over on downs on what probably should have been pass interference in the end zone, but wasn't called. They get a second opportunity down there, and they find a way to convert. Throws a nice pass over the middle amid the rush and everything else. That is the type of moxie and experience and composure that you get from a veteran, not from a rookie, and it fits this season. They ran a little montage of all the last-second wins they've had this season, and there's Daniels making a play, and there's Daniels making a play. And then he made another play tonight in a key spot to tie the game and get them down the field for that eventual game-winning field goal, the doink for the win, which was just perfect for this team that has done it so many times, but they wouldn't be here without him, and he rose to the occasion.
Right. You put it really well that he does play like a veteran. I think all the way back, I always like to think about how the games start. The very first third down of the game, they dialed up the perfect blitz, Patra, and they get a hit on Jayden Daniels, and he just stands in there and hits a dime and a great catch by Terry McLaurin. And they had that 17-play drive, and there is something about him. Kalijah Cansey almost had him down on that final drive where they could have forced a longer field goal or maybe not even a field goal and had more time, and he just gets out of the way so many times tonight and so many times this season. It felt like the other defense had the perfect play called, and he just finds a way to beat it.
He must be one of the most frustrating quarterbacks to play against because of that fact that you're right there. Kalijah Cansey literally played flag football with his towel and then kept it and kept running with the towel, which I thought was pretty funny. And then, like, there's so many times during the game, you're like, oh, they're going to get him on, they're going to sack him, but he slides to his left and then finds Terry McLaurin. Slides to his right. De'Ami Brown's going off this game. Like, he can get out of the pocket. He's slippery, and you have to be wary of his feet. Even though he didn't have a lot of yards today, he slipped out of tackles and he kept plays alive. And extending plays against a defense with a secondary that's battered, it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, the huge De'Ami Brown game, and including that big catch on that final drive, where it was Jayden's feet that had the Bucs defense so concerned, where it was a double spy. As Collinsworth pointed it out on the call, there were two guys in zone in the middle of the field watching Jayden Daniels allowing De'Ami Brown to come free on this backside dig that was also kind of thrown past the defender's ear hole, by the way, on an offense that was 8 of 15 on third down. And then you have to factor in that they went for it and got it 3 times on fourth down throughout the game, which is how this wagon of a Tampa Bay offense only ends up with 44 offensive plays, Greg. Because the time of possession was 35 minutes to 24 minutes in favor of the Commanders. They couldn't get back on the field, and when they did, they have to take advantage of those opportunities. And Baker had a boot for the ages.
Yes,
that really cost me.
We'll get to that, and I am biased. I liked this Buccaneers offense. I thought it was a wagon. I liked watching it, but this was the perfect way to beat them, especially with a flawed defense, which I think we can say Washington have. It's a team that, despite not really having a running game for a while, Brian Robinson goes 10 for 16 today.
They can't run the ball. They just can't.
Right. Eckler adds a little juice because he's good in the receiving game, and he made a couple plays, but he wasn't any better. And yet, because of Jayden's threat, like you think of the play to De'Ami Brown, which set up an earlier score where he steps up and the two defenders kind of step up to him as he's approaching the line of scrimmage, and he hits him deep. You think about just the small margins for error that he had. You mentioned earlier the fourth down play to McLaurin, which gave the Commanders a lead in the fourth quarter. Let's listen to that.
4th and 2 at the 5. 10 minutes to go, fourth quarter. Daniels in the gun. Eckler to his left. 3 wide receivers to the right. Terry's to the left. Here's the snap. Daniels to throw for it. Backpedaling into the end zone.
What a play.
Touchdown! Touchdown, Washington! 5-17! A clutch play in the lead!
Yeah, so that touchdown comes after the first major mistake from the Buccaneers in the fourth quarter. It was a fumble on a handoff between Baker and Jalen McMillan. And you, Kevin and Patrick, Patrick, you guys were trying to figure out, like, do we know, like, what that
It was a sweep to McMillan the whole way.
Okay.
I can't believe he tried to make I can't believe he tried to make that handoff happen because it just didn't look right. He put it in his hip. That's why I thought it was going to be a fake and a pitch to Bucky going the other way. But Bowles said after the game, as Patrick said, that it was supposed to be a sweep. Like, it just looked off, and I don't know why Baker didn't abort that because it wasn't going to work.
He ended up tying for the league lead in fumbles. Didn't lose a ton, but he had a ton of fumbles, and they couldn't do much the first 3 drives of the game. They only got 3 points out of them while Washington is just holding on to the ball, and you're just waiting for this game to kind of wake up, and they get the ball under 2 minutes to go, and they get a touchdown to go into halftime. They get a touchdown the first time they have the ball the second half, and you think, okay, it's going. They barely got any possessions in this game, only 7. So their next drive was that fumble, and it's just crazy, Shook, to think that this Buccaneers season, which was led by a top 5 offense, ends on a failed handoff on one drive, and then the next drive, they have a 3rd and a foot just outside the 10-yard line, and that was some sort of botch snap situation where him and the center are not on the same page. Graham Barton snaps it. The rest of the offensive line and Baker seem totally surprised. They lose a couple yards on the play and decide to kick a field goal. What a weird and brutal way, I guess I would say, for a season to end.
It was the worst possible time for the basic fundamentals to break down. That fumble on the handoff to McMillan, that's a snap count thing. Like, that's all about timing. And the jet sweep, you have to snap the ball, turn around in time to hand it to him, put him in his stomach. And he didn't put it in his stomach because the snap came too late. Then the snap comes too early on that play, and half of Washington defense is in the backfield, and they fail to convert in a huge spot, have to settle for 3, which then gives Washington the opportunity to go down and kick the field goal. It was so uncharacteristic of this team, but also this game was uncharacteristic of the Buccaneers for the same reasons that you guys just mentioned, which is the time of possession difference. You know, they went tempo for a lot of that touchdown drive in the third quarter, and they had Washington on skates. They had no way to react, no idea what to do, and they went right down the field and scored. And I thought, they don't really do that often, yet they feel the need to do it now to gain an advantage. It's like they were always grasping for small advantages as if they knew we were only going to have so many opportunities. And then in the fourth quarter, when those opportunities arrive, they botched them. And then you see their expression on the sideline when they realize their season is officially over, and they're just stunned because they realize we just let it slip through our hands. This is so unlike us. I can't believe it's over already when it was right there for the taking.
Right, and I can almost hear what Commanders fans are thinking right now. If London Fletcher is out there, he's a big NFL Daily guy, and he's like, yeah, but we had to go win the game. It's true. There was a sense of inevitability, and yet when you look at it, that field goal that they kicked to tie was with 4:40 left of the game with 3 timeouts. That takes an awesome professional quarterback and offense to be able to end the game with the ball. And it takes a lot of confidence that the Bucs defense was not going to come through. And it wasn't a great Bucs defense this year. And I think today they were hurt by a couple injuries. Jamel Dean goes out in this game. Zion McCollum was in and out at various points, and their replacements. What was that guy? Josh Hayes.
Yep.
Josh Hayes was weirdly in the crosshairs of a couple big games this year when he came in as an injury replacement. Unfortunately, that was a big factor to it, but that was part of it, that I just felt like the team's offenses had the big advantages tonight, which is why I ask you, Patrick Claybon, my fourth down maven, should they have gone for 4th and 3, down 20-17, under 5 minutes to go, in the red zone after that messed up 3rd and a foot?
Absolutely, with the benefit of hindsight. According to Next Gen Stats,
yes,
Todd Bowles was perfect on 4th down on his decisions.
Okay,
today that one, the 4th and 7, in the first quarter, it was a field goal by 0.04%.
Okay,
that was very close. It was a full 2.5%. To kick that last field goal.
Interesting. You're down 3, obviously.
Right.
So your chances of losing the game if you don't pick that up is high. The one thing I would say is those numbers aren't about the matchup that you're in. And I just feel like if you go to the rule of like what the other team doesn't want you to do, the Buccaneers offense ultimately had a huge edge on Washington's defense. And I think vice versa was true. Like Dan Campbell's going for that. I'm just saying.
Other than snapping the ball in the 4th quarter, the Bucs had a huge advantage on offense. Right?
Right. But you got to take your chance. You got to go with the
because they just had 3rd and a foot.
Right.
And it was
Todd Bowles is not going to go
catastrophic.
for that, though. That's not who he is. That's not who he is, though. That's not who Todd Bowles is.
Yeah, it's a great point you saying that Dan Quinn would have gone for it, because Dan Quinn went for 4th down for the touchdown twice in the 4th quarter of this game. The first time, it doesn't work. It's funny how you end up remembering these games, because Jayden Daniels did play really well, Shooky. But that sequence right near the goal line before Baker Mayfield fumbled the ball was his worst sequence of the game. He chooses not to throw. He just gets a little hesitant on a wide open touchdown on 1st down. He throws what should have been an interception potentially on 3rd down. Was that Levante who had a chance?
Deion Jones.
Oh, Deion Jones. Deion Jones is playing big moment.
He didn't play a snap in the regular season on defense.
Literally Dan Quinn's guy for the Commanders. That wouldn't have been a revenge game. It just would have been, hey, Dan, remember me?
Back in the NFC South.
Remember when that podcaster Gregg Rosenthal wrote 500 words about me and who was the other linebacker on the team at halftime of Falcons Patriots, and I've told that story about 17
Devondre
times.
Campbell.
Devondre Campbell, and then they never used that word. It's just like we would have remembered it much differently. He threw an incompletion on 4th down, but ultimately it didn't happen. There will be Bulls discussion after this one. Shook. What do you think? I've been floating the idea that it's possible, depending on how the end of the season went, like if they didn't make the playoffs, for instance, that they would get rid of Bulls to prevent Liam Cohen from leaving. If you were going to create a scenario where after making the playoffs, that could possibly happen, this is pretty close to it, like a frustrating, close loss where people aren't happy with the game management, even though I don't think the game management and the timeout usage was that close to like his worst game in that realm. Like it's not a strength of his, but tonight I think you're picking nits a little too much.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard because playoffs, sometimes it can just be a weird thing. Like Cliff Kingsbury had a couple of terrible play calling sequences in the red zone when they got down there in the second half, and yet they come away victorious. So we all forget that. We remember this because Todd Bowles' defense didn't stand up and get a stop late in the game. But if we think about the season in total, think about what these Buccaneers have been through. They lost their 2 top receivers for a significant portion of the season, and yet they still managed to finish strong, win the NFC South, make the playoffs, have a home game, and be in a position to win. Ultimately, they fell short. Everybody wants to kill Todd Bowles for his clock management issues before the end of the first half. It ends up working out perfectly for them because of the playmaking of the Buccaneers. And so, like, he's been in the crosshairs for a while. My question is, like, where do you want to go as a franchise? Because you've been this team that since Tom Brady was on your team and you had that title window that was there and closing and you went and got one and you felt like you maybe could have tried to get another one, you never did. You've kind of just been trying to find a way to keep it afloat, right? And stay competitive. You lucked out when you got Baker Mayfield and he thrived with Dave Canales and now with Liam Cohen. If it comes down to whether you keep Liam Cohen versus Todd Bowles, you keep Liam Cohen. And you can point to all these issues in the past with Todd Bowles, but I just don't know if you get that much better without Todd Bowles. Who else is out there that's going to elevate you to the point that you think you're supposed to be, when in reality, maybe it's a combination of coaching and personnel? I mean, they still won the division. They still were really close to winning a playoff game. It's kind of a high standard.
Yeah, considering we just outlined the difference in this game, right? The ball goes past Yaya Diaby's thumb by a fraction of an inch. The kick 2 inches one way, it's bouncing back. Maybe they're still playing the game while we're having this discussion. Who knows? Kalijah Kancey grabs a flag. Baker's fumble. If your hiring and firing decisions come down to those moments, then you don't have a process at all. Everything is just vibes. And I don't think that's a good way to operate a football franchise. And I'm sure people are frustrated by the outcomes. Okay, like I don't see a reason to, but it's fire everybody. You know, Sean McDermott almost got fired according to folks earlier this year. Like who cares?
Best case scenario is that you return the coaching staff next year. But Patrick, if you're in a situation where you have intel, the Jaguars are going to make Liam Cohen your their head coach. I think it's a serious consideration because I think they had a special season offensively, and he was an excellent play caller, and that combination of play caller and quarterback to me is the most valuable thing that you can have, and so it's a discussion, I believe.
But they already did that with Dirk Cutter and didn't work out for him, did it?
Yeah, and how often are good play callers good head coaches? It's like 50, like Norv Turner. You want to have Norv Turner as your head coach? I wouldn't.
It was maybe folks were saying last year, it's like, we gotta keep Canales in there. Let's get rid of Todd Bowles. It doesn't necessarily make sense to me. There's a lot of talented people who can orchestrate an offense if they have the pieces. Jalen McMillan's going to be better next year. Mike Evans is still producing. Baker's maybe not going to lead the league in turnovers next year. That's a slight on the offense, at least fumbles.
Offensive line is awesome. Cade Otton is sneaky good. Bucky Irving ran really well.
They need to fix the defense
tonight. Although when they didn't pick up that 3rd and a foot, was that after the run that Bucky Irving stopped his feet? We're watching in the film room with MJD, and he was absolutely right. I love watching the games with MJD because he has such a good feel of what the running backs do in a giving situation. And yeah, on that first down, it's that counterplay that Chris Collinsworth was talking about, where the blockers, and it's just beautiful. And Bucky Irving's been amazing running it all night, and he gets to the edge. And to your point about small margins, and Lattimore comes up to kind of force him to the inside, and Irving does what to someone like MJD is a cardinal sin of a running back. I mean, you are running forward with all the momentum in the world. This is a situation where momentum does exist. And there's two defenders coming up, and he just chops his feet all of a sudden, and he just completely stops. And it was that set up the 3rd and a foot. And I'm not getting on Bucky Irving or saying that he is at fault for that, but it is those like little small margins in a playoff game where when they're watching the tape tomorrow, they're all going to think the same thing, that maybe 19 times out of 10, if you put Bucky Irving there in that situation with that much room and a full head of steam, he picks up that yard, and then it's a totally different game, and we're having different conversations. It's just crazy, these playoff games. That's why you love them, though, because everything is so magnified.
The play before the center was the only person on his own individual snap count.
Mm-hmm.
There was the Baker Mayfield fake run to Bucky Irving.
Right. That was the actual play before. So
yes.
Bucky Irving was first down, and then Baker was second down.
And so, if you're going to fire Todd Bowles for that, go for it. I think that would be a bad move.
Our friend Ollie Connolly, who I believe is going to join me on a show this week, we're going to talk a little bit about the hirings and the firings around the league. He really thought it sounded like they had a sneak called that Baker bailed out of because of what he saw. He changed the signal on that, and he changed his cadence up a little, and everyone was on the same page of what Baker, and this is just watching the tape, you're not for sure, but he believes everyone was on the same page of how he changed it up, except for Barton, clearly, and that's how it ends. But man, this Commanders ride just keeps going. They are the story of the season. Absolutely fun, and they will be heading to Detroit next weekend. That is one matchup in the NFC. Let's go to Philadelphia to determine what the other one was going to be.
2nd down in the yard. Hurts takes the football. He is going to throw. He does in the flat. The nice catch by Goddard, who breaks the tackle across the 5. Touchdown! Goddard.
Beast. He beasted him. He catches a simple flare pattern out into the flat, Merrill. And the cornerback is there, and he just beast modes him, pushes him in the face, not once, twice, and into the end zone. That's Dallas Goedert.
That is Dallas Goedert, and then that is Merrill Reese, Mike Quick on WIP. When that play was happening, and he stiff-armed him for about 20 straight yards and got that 3rd stiff arm in, I leapt up because I was like, we finally got a highlight. In a game that just not much was happening, and I felt like I knew who was going to win, and probably by a couple scores, and that is what happened. It wasn't happening. And Dallas Goedert showed up for us when we needed it. 22-10. Eagles win a game in a way that I feel like they've won a lot of games, where at the end of it, people say, that wasn't really a great performance by the Eagles. That was the B- Eagles, and they still won easy. But is it really the B- Eagles when that's what they do? They don't make mistakes on offense, and they're just an awesome defense that just squeezes the life out of you. It happened to Jordan Love today, and ultimately this defense is the biggest reason why they are going to be tough to beat in the NFC.
They don't give up anything easy. There was nothing easy for Jordan Love all day. Those quick outs, the quick slants, nothing came easy. There's always guys in his face. I haven't seen, and we can get into the injuries on the offensive line, but Zach Tom was getting worked over.
Yeah.
We've never seen him get worked over in a very long time. But the Eagles defense just won this game, and this is how they play. This is how they played all year. They play to their opponent, and they're a defensive team. I don't know why we expect them to be some offensive juggernaut when they haven't shown that all year. They're big runs by Saquon Barkley and their defense.
Yeah, and the potential for a big run by Saquon Barkley at the very end of the game, he decides to just slide down. I think after only 17 yards or so. Hell, let's listen to that call. I'm curious how they handled what should have been a game-ending celebratory touchdown by Saquon.
In the pistol. Again, it goes to Barkley. And again, he breaks. He's at the 40, and he falls down. He could have taken that home. He was out in front of the world. He could have taken that to the distance, but he said, I will do the gentlemanly thing. I will fall down and run out the clock.
You know, he picks up 17 yards, but he's beyond the entire defense already.
He's gone.
And all he has to do is just keep running because you can't catch this guy. But
he said, I'll slide down and save some for next week.
Oh, that was great, especially on the TV copy where they just show a beaming Howie Roseman on the sideline. And yes, Saquon said after the game, his teammates said, you could have gone further, though. You could have just ran for a while and then slid down. But no, he's saving his mileage, and he did look fresh in this game. His very first carry was badass, but the Packers defense was up for it. It was hard-earned yards all day for Saquon, and that's why it took so long for the game to really be over.
Yeah, they crowded the line of scrimmage. I thought coverage was good until because we saw that Dallas Goedert touchdown, which got things going. Jalen Hurts had 28 yards passing before that drive. Then he hits Devontae Smith for 28 yards. Hits Devontae again for 9 yards, and then Dallas Goedert stiffs Valentine all the way into the end zone for that score where they started to get some production there from the passing game. But you worried about the Eagles there for a while because he went, I believe, a couple of possessions without a completion, and they really couldn't do anything on offense. The defense carried this team for significant portions of the first.
Almost 2 full quarters without a completion.
Yeah, at one point, he had his last completion, like with 5 minutes left in the first quarter, and we were mid to late third quarter. I think it was 7 straight incompletions. It maybe even jumped up after that when I wrote
10
it.
dropbacks, I think 7 incompletions, and he got sacked twice, and he scrambled for a negative yard.
7.
And yet they were never really in trouble in this game because of the defense and because Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions. And look, Shook, we're going to have some annoying discourses about quarterbacks. I guess that's just what happens in the offseason. Yeah. And Justin Herbert is on the AFC side, and I think Jordan Love is going to be on the NFC side. And it was an uneven game and an uneven season for Love, and this kind of typified it. And you give him some asterisks, though, because Romeo Doubs goes out with a concussion at one point. Jayden Reed then goes out in the second half. That there was a lot going on in this game injury-wise for Green Bay, and they just were not ready to stand up to it.
Yeah, concussion suffered on a ball to the end zone, too. Like, considering situation, just another loss in a terrible spot. He also didn't have Christian Watson in this game to begin with because of his knee injury. So, yeah, they're not operating with a full cover, but you want to talk about typifying his season. I mean, this is a guy who suffered an injury to his knee in week 1 and missed a couple of games. It just felt like he never was afforded really an opportunity to get on track. He had some great moments this season. That Saints game, that blowout win in primetime was one of them. But when we went into this season coming off of that, incredible back half that he had last year going into the playoffs and what they did in the playoffs, you expected more. And maybe we shouldn't have expected as much once we saw him get hurt in week 1, and it ends in a clunker. Now, he's not the only Packers quarterback that ends up being a legend in Green Bay that's had a clunker of a playoff game. Favre did it. Rodgers did it. Like, nobody's perfect. It's just that for this team, it was all too fitting for how they've looked in the last couple of weeks. And against a defense like this, you can't afford to make these mistakes. Even if the score is still close because Philly's offense can't get it going, you just can't afford to make these mistakes. So that's what they're going to come away with, a sour taste in their mouth and some questions about him. But I think if any franchise is going to stay the course, it's the Packers with Jordan Love. It's just one of those experiences that he's going to have to learn from.
Yeah, I think the panic button should not be being pressed in Green Bay. It's one advantage of us where we're just not like, you're laughing, and I even purposefully sent a tweet out about it afterwards. It's like, this team is really young. They're in a great situation. They won 2 more games than they did a year ago. Their point differential actually went up by 80, 90 points a year ago. But I just knew, and then I started seeing it, like Packers fans who want LaFleur fired.
That's ridiculous.
And like, I mean, that's ridiculous. But just like making this out to be some huge disappointment, and Love is a total bust. It's like, Love had an 8-week stretch here where he was averaging 9 adjusted yards per attempt. Multiple things can be true, though, and he wasn't fighting with a full deck. He also did not play well today. The first interception was just an overthrow. One throw really sticks out to me, a 4th down to Malik Heath, where he just missed the throw. And that is something that happens with Jordan Love. He just kind of misses throws in a way you don't totally want.
But you also see the other side of that, where there was the throw down the sideline to Malik Heath with pressure in his face. He goes up and gets that ball away from, I believe it was Reed Blankenship, a great back shoulder throw. They had spots where you've seen that those outs to Romeo Doubs on the goal line, where when that's Malik Heath, right? It was a tough completion for the Packers, and Elton Jenkins going down.
That was
a big part of this game. Keyshawn Nixon absolutely recovered that fumble. I have no idea how that was not a clear recovery, but he's laying on the ground being touched by a defender holding a football with two hands.
I was confused of how they never gave that a better explanation.
The panic button situation for Green Bay is preposterous. A very good Eagles team on the road. What are we doing?
Yeah, you're talking about the fumble on the very opening kickoff. The Eagles recover it. Massive hit. Good job by Oren Burks, who's going to have a big role down the stretch here for the Eagles. Unfortunately, Nakobe Dean left with what looked like a serious knee injury. He was carted off, and Oren Burks ended up mostly stepping in for him. But yeah, 3 plays later, after a Saquon run, a couple of runs, a nice one, Jalen Hurts drops back to pass, and he still might be in that pocket. I don't think we have that highlight, but it was just amazing to me how long he was just sitting back there. It was a reminder, man, this offensive line, not that they were perfect tonight, but they should have a better passing game considering he gets such great pass protection in the receivers that they have.
He looks like he's overthinking, and he started out hot. He started out 6 for 6. And then he can't hit the broadside of the barn. And I have an issue with whether it's Kellen Moore, whether it's Nick Sirianni. They don't give him enough easy throws, or maybe he just doesn't take them. Because when they started getting the quick to Devontae Smith and that Goddard, where was that for a quarter and a half? They got it going, and then they scored a touchdown in 4 plays. Boom, 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 boom. Quick outs, quick slants. They just don't. I don't feel like they gave him enough easy reads, or he's not taking them right off the bat.
Yeah, when he holds it, usually good things don't happen. He's such an interesting player because he's so good at what he does well. Even as a runner, it's very similar. It's like he is almost as good as any running back in the league, and I'm even throwing Lamar in this at just downhill runs. Like in terms of downhill power as a quarterback, and he just has to kind of move to the side or run over a guy. And when he's decisive, he's as good as anyone. And yet when he starts going horizontal, the play's over.
Yes.
Like it never works out well. He's such a fascinating player. Are you concerned at all, I guess, Shook, that on a day where they end up going +4 in the turnover margin, and yes, that one touchdown that they had, which stood for a while, was off a very short drive. Are you concerned that they only get 22 points up? They didn't get 300 yards. They only hit 2 third downs in this game, 16 first downs overall. Like it was not a great offensive performance overall.
No, it wasn't. It's funny because when they get that turnover and then they score in 3 plays, I'm like, all right, here they go. They're off to the races. Here we go. I know they had a short field, but they made it look relatively easy. I think he held the ball for 6.75 seconds before that touchdown pass to Jahan Dotson. And then they just disappeared, like we just described. I would be more concerned against a lesser team, but Green Bay's defense has been sneaky effective, and they found their way through. I mean, I think it's perfect that they scored their longest touchdown pass of a low-scoring game was on a swing pass to a tight end who then just runs over a guy for a touchdown. Like that fit the day for them. They're going to run into more challenges, but I think this offense still starts with Saquon. And if that is rolling early, then it opens everything else up. I also think you saw a little bit of the rust. Jalen hadn't played in a few weeks. Saquon didn't play in week 18. I think that had something to do with it as well. So maybe they have some things to correct on the tape before they go into next week. I'm not panicking. Again, don't leave the case on the panic button here. The Eagles won. They're moving on. It's fine.
It's how they win.
But
yes.
Yeah,
it's kind of how they win. I mean, but they were so quiet on offense. A.J. Brown only ends up with 1 catch for 10 yards and mostly makes news for, just reading a book on the side. I mean, shout out to Book Sky. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm checking out the book content there. I sent out some Bookstagram content of my top 10 favorite reads. So I just love, the A.J. Brown on the sideline reading this book.
So A.J. Brown, well, we're figuring that out. He, he's a little frustrated. Obviously, he hasn't seen too many balls today. He's going to read a little passage here.
I haven't seen too many people read books, but I've seen a quarterback eat a hot dog.
Mark Sanchez.
Certainly not in the playoffs.
That's cool, calm, and collected.
I was worried for Tom's kids. When he's like, I haven't seen too many people read a book, but just It was on brand. AJ Brown did tweet about it after the game, and he gave a shout out to the book Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy, and he said the game's 90% mental, 10% physical. Brings it to every game.
I read some excerpts.
Okay.
And I will say there's some in that audio that we heard. Marshall Mathers' lyrics for "Lose Yourself" are a little more impactful than the words that I read.
Oh wow!
Which is why I will be dropping
for you.
I will be dropping my book, "Subterranean Winning," coming out. If any NFL players would like to hear my thoughts on success and the highest levels of competition.
Wow. I mean, one thing I noticed when he's flipping it open, and you can see it on the tweet too, that was dog-eared. It's underlined, it's highlighted.
Highlighted and underlined the same passages. Interesting move.
I mean, I love it. I want to normalize just breaking out a book in any situation. The funniest thing about it was I couldn't believe people were like, this is crazy. Not in it. It's different behavior, but the idea that people were saying this was somehow diva-ish behavior, or that it was like distracting. I was like, this man is trying to center himself so that he can do his best for the team. So it works for AJ. I mean, if that's what is helping to create this season.
He said he brings it every week, though. I have a hard time believing nobody had ever seen it before, though, because even the beat writers were like, "We've never seen this. How is it never caught before?"
They asked Hurts about it in the post game. He said, "Yeah, I've seen him open it. I haven't seen him reading it."
It's like LeBron when he's always reading the first page of a book in the locker room.
Perhaps. And I'm team book. I just Greg's got some great lists of books. We can get some folks some books. The self-help genre is a little overdone.
Yeah,
a little bit.
I hate to criticize something I haven't really tried. So it does.
I'll do it for you, Greg.
Okay, yeah. I don't think it would help me.
To each their own.
Personally,
look,
I would say.
We know one thing. AJ Brown's palms were not sweaty, his knees were not weak, and his arms were not heavy.
Yeah, there you go. Look, Philadelphia. Love this team. And I do want to, just before we go, sort of remember of all the football we watched this weekend, and there's been some ugly football. It kind of reminds me of week 1 and 2 when everyone's like, oh, is offense gone again? Is defense taking over? And then that went away. Offense was great, for most of the season. Defense is back. And I really did think watching these games, specifically the Texans, and then specifically the Eagles today, like Nolan Smith, that sack on Tom, for instance, the way Dean and Bond were bouncing off of each other, Zach Bond's interception, just everything Zach Bond does. If you just watch him all game, it's really fun. The interception by Slay that's
beautiful.
That's a great play.
That's what I've seen all year.
Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful.
And Quinyon Mitchell, I think he was thrown at 6 times. He gave up 10 yards. He had that long PI that was to me
embellishment in my world.
Which was one of Jordan Love's worst throws. It landed about 20 yards out of bounds. Like, that was uncatchable to me. And Jalen Carter was an absolute beast. They were physical as hell, Shooky. Like, this is one of the better defenses that we've seen. I always say it's so hard for a defense to be really difference-making in the NFL. They are the best defense in the NFL. I feel like that's safe to say, right?
Yeah, and it actually is what's given me great confidence in their chances to make the Super Bowl in these playoffs. Like, I know we're talking Lions. I know we're talking Vikings. I'm talking Eagles because of that defense, plain and simple. They can have a game like this against anybody that they play. And I think they're going to be a challenge for whoever they run into as long as they're still, eligible to play and haven't been eliminated.
Right. And we don't know who they're going to play. It's going to be against the Monday Night Football winner, and they will be playing on Sunday. So it'll be a shorter week for whoever wins on Monday night, but not the shortest week possible if they had to try to turn it around on Saturday. But they get another home game. Shout out to Josh Jacobs for a great performance all season long. That near touchdown he had was awesome, and then he cashes it in right after that. He just had a great season, but a frustrating end for the Packers. I have not seen this video, so I am hoping it delivers. It is Matt LaFleur knocking over a Gatorade bottle on the podium after the game.
Like I said, they played mostly zone coverage the entire game. So, it's just right now. Nice. That's about par for the night right there.
So he didn't knock it over. Did he?
It just fell over on its own.
It appears to.
So I didn't have like a time code for that happening. So I watched the whole conference and I'm watching that ball the whole time, just shake. I'm waiting for it to happen. And that's the back end of like a 45-second answer where he's like in deep, like what went wrong.
Yeah.
And it's just and right after you can hear the PR person like, 2 more. Like, let's get out of here.
Was it made of tungsten?
Yeah, that was sounded. Yeah, what was that? I thought it was a coffee mug.
I watched part of that press conference too, Eric, and I couldn't find like an easy clip or that would be perfect because it was just him speaking, and this is what I wanted, coaches, just him speaking off the dome for like 5 minutes, opening statement, uninterrupted, and just feeling it, just feeling the loss. So upset, frustrated, everything possible. The end of a tough season, but a good season overall for the Packers. Ends around, though, before last season. Let's take a quick break. We have one AFC game to talk about on Sunday. We hit the 2 on Saturday. Yeah, if you're wondering, how come you guys aren't talking those Saturday games? We already did a podcast on that. Go check out the podcast with me and Bill Barnwell that we taped Saturday night. After the break, we will head to Buffalo.
3 receivers to the right, 1 to the left, and now Ty Johnson retreats to the backfield. Here's the snap. He's going to go back to pass. Allen rolling out to his right, looking for somebody open. Nobody is. Has to throw it to the end zone for Ty Johnson, who makes a sliding catch in the end zone for a touchdown. Well, who would have expected that? Talk about stretching the play out to the last possible second. A 24-yard touchdown strike from Allen to Ty Johnson. And with that touchdown pass, Josh Allen passes Hall of Famer Jim Kelly for the most touchdowns in team history in the playoffs.
Wow. Good nugget there by Chris Brown on WGR. Bills would roll after that. Another touchdown pass to go break that record some more. Curtis Samuel added a 55-yard touchdown early in the fourth quarter. It was off to the races. Bills win 31-7 in a game that the Broncos led 7-0, that they only trailed at halftime 10-7. I thought this thing might go down to the wire, and it didn't. Why didn't it, Patrick?
Well, we just saw it. That was the highest leverage play of the game. It's 4th and 1 at that point. And we talked about Jalen Hurts having 6.75 seconds. Same number for Josh Allen on that play, except the difference is the ball travels 43 yards in the air. Josh Allen off his back foot, fractions of an inch, fractions of a second from Ty Johnson's leg being out of bounds, where it felt like the game plan for Vance Joseph was to make Buffalo drive, make them earn it, not give up the big plays, and get something from the offense. And they got that early, but it was just too much to overcome. They didn't hit their high leverage plays. They had Will Lutz miss a field goal right at the end of the first half. And it's just one of those things where it was discussed on the call of the game. You're an underdog on the road, and you're going to have everything go right. And eventually those things just didn't go right, especially the passing game for the Broncos, which was kind of janky and segmented after that second half started.
Right. The Bills are such a different team this year. I know they've won in the wild card round sometimes by a lot before, and yet I think this game really showed how much more mature they are as a team. Just like they can beat you any sort of way. And I was really impressed, Kevin, how early they were so patient with the running game. Vance Joseph was saying, like, beat us this way. Mm-hmm. The Bills are like, okay, we'll put our 6 offensive linemen out there. The run to pass ratio in the end was 44 runs, 28 passes, which is like, okay, it was a laugher. It must have got out of control late. No, there was 22 runs, 12 passes early, and they kept sticking with it. And more importantly, they can do it really well against a good defense.
Well, it made the Broncos adjust their defense because they kept pounding it, and Allen was like, are you going to play 2 shell? Mm-hmm. I'm just going to keep handing up. They had 128 yards rushing at halftime. Josh Allen had 69 yards passing.
Woo!
In the second half, he flipped it because then the Broncos were like, all right, we got to bring some blitzes. And then Josh burned him with 4 deep shots, 2 of them for touchdowns. And he ended up with 272 total passing yards. So you do the math, 200 yards in the second half. because they just got those openings because they were patient early. And if he's such a more mature quarterback this year than in any other year, it's not just the not taking sacks and not just the avoiding bad turnovers. It's him understanding, like, okay, you're going to do this to me. I'm fine with that. I'm not going to force it. I'm going to just hand the ball off to James Cook, and we're going to run for 120 yards.
That's exactly what I mean. Even the sack that he did take in the red zone before they kicked the field goal to 7-3, that was one play as he was stepping up. I had visions of like bad Josh Allen plays in my mind for a second. Like, how is this going to go? They've got him totally surrounded, and you could see for a second, and then he just took the sack. And I don't want to be the guy who's like rewarding the guy for, attaboy, you took a sack, like you avoided the negative play. But for Josh Allen, I think this performance, Nick, did show a lot. And you got to love a team that goes out there and they put 6 offensive linemen on the field on almost a quarter of their snaps. They led the league in doing this during the season, and they did it way more in this game than they usually do. And yeah, Allen ends up with 46, but Ty Johnson goes 9 for 44. They put him in for a drive, and they're electric, and Cook gets 120-1. It's just a crazy combination to have all of those guys and Josh Allen running the ball.
Yeah, it's indicative of this entire Bills season, I think, because they went into the offseason, they lost Stephon Diggs via trade, and they had to, kind of reformulate who they were. And all the questions came, who are they going to throw it to? Well, they didn't really need to figure out who they were going to throw it to. They were just going to change who they were and not be so aggressive. Instead, take what defenses give them. Be aggressive when those opportunities arose, but don't force it, just like you said. That's how you end up winning the time of possession battle, 41 minutes and 43 seconds to 18-17. Sure, you're going to make us work for it. Guess what? You're not going to see the football. The Broncos ended this game with 8 possessions, 4 in each half. And if you're not capitalizing on all of those, the Bills are just going to squeeze you to death. They're going to squeeze you into submission like a boa constrictor, and it's going to look like a laugher when it really kind of wasn't that case until probably after that touchdown pass to Ty Johnson we just talked about. I mean, that's a play that takes the life out of an opponent when you're playing well enough to keep it close, and then they hit a 4th down like that. And that displays the maturity that you just spoke of. This is a Bills team that understands the goal ahead and the task at hand, which is win this game and get to the next. You don't have to be flashy to do it. Just win the game and move on. And then they end up being flashy as a result.
They had 8 different players have at least 2 targets in this game. One player had 6. That's Khalil Shakir. Caught all of them. Everyone else had either 2 or 3. And you were like, who are you going to throw it to? The answer is mostly not Amari Cooper, who is 5th on the team in snaps at wide receiver, Patrick. Isn't that crazy?
And one of those 2 catches was like a screen ball where it's like, this is not what you get Amari Cooper for.
Right.
Like
he ran 11 routes, and the snaps are distributed pretty evenly, where it's not like a huge gap between 1 and 5, but he is 5th, and it's lower than the 2 tight ends too. So technically, it's like 7th among possible pass catchers, and it's fine. And it kind of was a sneaky, one-sided game. I guess it's not that sneaky the way the second half played out, but I couldn't believe this stat that I saw from Jay Skursky of, I believe, the Buffalo News. The yardage differential in this game, 471 to 224, that's a 247-yard differential. That was the biggest in any playoff game since Cam Newton started a game against the Arizona Cardinals, right? And I want you guys to guess who was the starting quarterback for the Cardinals in this game. I mean, I would give you guys so much money.
Shelton?
This wasn't the NFC Championship game.
This is, I believe, the wild card or divisional
Was
round.
it that one where they had gone like through the 3 quarterbacks?
That's absolutely right, and why it's a tough answer.
John
for you.
Skelton.
That's what. Oh,
That's not right. He was, I think, their backup that year. It was Ryan Lindley, and it was the worst. It was the worst.
My guy.
Didn't they throw
Former
for like
Browns quarterbacks
32
coach.
yards?
Yeah, it was the worst performance I've ever seen by any playoff team. It was. I don't know what that yardage one was, but it was like off. It was absolutely.
Ryan Lindley looking across at Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly.
It was troubling.
Prom Josh Norman.
It was a game that was over within about like 6 minutes, which you just don't see too often. This one gave us a lot more entertainment, in part because the Broncos offense had a great first drive. Bo Nix rips a 3rd and long on his very first 3rd down of the game, first throw of the game, and then has a beautiful touchdown pass. And the rest of the game, I felt like there was a couple drops in there. I don't think Bo Nix played that bad. There were a couple times where he didn't see the field well, and maybe panicked a bit, but I felt like it was kind of a full team, just we're not good enough versus like a bad Bo Nix game.
Yeah, there was the Cortland Sutton drop.
Yes.
I think doomed to drive. The drive at the end of the first half where there was a 12-yard Bo Nix scramble, then he hit Cortland Sutton, I believe, for 21 yards before Lutz missed the field goal. Just in spots, but then when the opposition is the juggernaut that's handing the ball off a lot, running the ball the way they did, they just had to execute better, and it felt like there was something missing.
A run game all season, really.
Yeah, they can't run the ball. I felt like the Bills and McDermott knew exactly who they were going at, and they were going to make Bo Nix try to get to his second and third read, and knew he couldn't do it under pressure. He did not play well. This was like, I think, the most he's been pressured in a game all season, and he just didn't play well. I don't think he played poorly because, like you said, there was those drops, but he couldn't execute at a level that I think in 2 or 3 years he will be able to.
Yeah, it was a lot of just misses. Now he had a couple just missed an interception, so it could have gone the other way too. But just a pass off here or there. They didn't get the running game going all year. Sean Payton just talked about how, look, we couldn't do anything on third down, and we couldn't win their first downs at all. They were living in like 2nd and 4 all year, and you wonder if the Broncos, who have a really good defense, but they're so light that you might want to add like a little bit of size. Greg Rousseau, Von Miller, Matt Milano played almost every snap, so some good signs, I think, for the Bills defense, who, oh boy, like, let's get going. Shooky, we got it. This is one of the better divisional round games I can remember. I guess it's too early. We shouldn't already be previewing next week. Actually, let's hear from Sean McDermott before we hear from Nick Shook talking about next week.
Yeah, I mean, this is what everyone's been waiting for, right? So it'll be a nice week, and everyone will be looking forward to it. And they're a great football team, right? I mean, they handled us pretty good the first go around, and they're certainly playing well coached. John's won a Super Bowl and comes from great pedigree, so it'll be a big challenge for us.
Woo! We don't need to preview the game next week, but I don't know, Shook. Like, how do you see this? Like, the discourse is going to be annoying. But how do you think
I jinx somebody say
like it's going to be very annoying. But how do you think like they set themselves up, kind of where they are now, maybe versus where they were early in the season?
The Bills' best chance of victory is to follow the same approach that they had today. The question is, can you run the ball as effectively against a defense that has more weight to it? That is probably coming, they're coming together really well in Baltimore down the back half of this season. Zach Orr's really figured out how to use this defense to his advantage. And at what point, when you have to shift to ask Josh Allen to make plays, at what point in the game does that arrive? Is it early? Is it often? Because if it's early and often, then you're going to be in a hell of a battle if you can't lean on the run game early. But it's going to be quite a matchup. And we already know what Baltimore's offense, which looks like one of the best units in the league, can do. Obviously, we'll spend all week talking about it, but it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, I like for them that Milano was able to play more snaps, stay in on third down. I like that Vaughn had 2 of the team's 3 quick pressures, but there are 5 pressures overall, and had a couple quick ones. So he's coming around at the long time. I also think their short yardage package has now passed the Eagles as the best short yardage. Don't you think? Because they do the Josh Allen push, and that's never stopped ever. But they also mix in the on the 3rd and 1 where they knew they had the 4th and 1 to go to, where he kind of boots out and it's defended perfectly, and he makes you miss on the edge in a way maybe Jalen Hurts probably wouldn't. They can do anything in those short yardages.
Well, yeah, snapping the ball to Josh, I think is always going to help. I do know a Rams team over across the street that had success against the Josh Allen quarterback sneak.
Fair,
especially late.
Fair.
I'm not going to put them on the level of the Eagles in that situation because I think it's fundamentally different the way they approach it. I mean, the Eagles were able to run a trick play off of it just because of the certainty, right today that they were going to get it on 4th down. I don't know that the Bills necessarily have that luxury, and in with the game and the stakes and the abilities of the team, I don't. How many 4th downs are we going to see?
Well, that's fair. How are you feeling, Patrick? I was hoping, because that's the Sunday afternoon game. It's the last one. It's Tony Romo. It's Jim Nantz. It's the entree of this weekend. And so, generally we would be here in the office. Like, are you going to watch it in the theater with us, with all us common folk?
Primarily, I will be watching the football game by myself.
Okay.
I will be loud. There will be a lot of swear words, one way or the other. Probably won't be looking at Twitter. I'll be pacing back and forth and yelling obscenities at the screen. So I'll keep it.
I kind of feel for you because having been there with the Patriots, you don't want the game. You want the game to be on Saturday. If you're doing like a Sunday night show, you want like the 24 hours to kind of like calm down your emotions, maybe good or bad from it. Just you don't want to be raw coming into the studio after a loss. But the listeners hopefully will like it if that happened.
Yeah, I mean anybody that puts up with me anyway, I appreciate it regardless. But it's during is tough. It's tough to be around. I mean, having to listen to Herbie is enough. I don't know.
Oh yeah, last night was not great. Let's listen to Sean McDermott again. I want to hear him talk about that Ty Johnson touchdown, which really was the biggest play of the game and an incredible play by Johnson.
What I saw, well, probably like you on Ty's touchdown, I was going, oh, come on, oh yeah, good.
Yeah, that was
yes,
his version of that exactly. Great job by the Bills and a great season for the Broncos. Considering what people thought about that team coming into the season, I know our friend Cynthia Freeland had that as her favorite over under of the year as an over 5.5, but
good for her.
But that was 5.5. Like,
I mean, they shed some veterans on defense, and their defense was still good. That's a credit to Vance Joseph for sure.
I think they have a really solid foundation to build from because they have a great play caller, an offensive line that is clearly coached well, and they can tweak if they need to, and plenty of talent on defense. Maybe the defensive player of the year. They're going to need to get better because the schedule is going to get harder. They really didn't beat any good teams this year. They kind of made it through the whole season without basically beating a good team that was trying to win. So they need to get better, but they can get better. That division suddenly looks very good. Okay, that's it for the games. We have the schedule. I haven't gone through them all in a row yet. So we will be starting, Houston Texans. Love that Saturday afternoon window. Now they're almost undefeated, 6-2 and west of us, but that's only wild card weekend. The magic doesn't work on Saturday afternoon, and that's when they'll be in Arrowhead. That is the ESPN Troy Aikman game. That night is the Fox game. Tom Brady back in our lives. Lions and Commanders. Expect a lot of points there. Sunday morning, or rather afternoon. Now they got the noon Pacific 3 p.m. start. You have the winner of Rams Vikings who will be heading to Philadelphia, surely as an underdog, and then Ravens and Bills as the capper starting at 6:30 Eastern. Woo! It's got to be fun. My favorite weekend of the year, and yet I can't feel like we can look forward that much, Nick, because we have a Monday night recap to do tomorrow night.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that as well. Before we get out, it feels a little off topic, but the New England Patriots hired a head coach. How about that? As the person, Nick, that resembles Mike Vrabel most physically on the show, I'll let you go first. Talk me out of this being like a vaguely annoying hire because it just feels like more of the same, going back to the same well, no fresh ideas, that sort of thing. I feel like I'm on an island here among Patriots fans who are generally loving this.
I'm also the person who grew up like 5 minutes from where Mike Vrabel went to high school, but that's
there
neither
you
here
go.
nor
There it is.
It's like what you were going for with Gerard Mayo, except he has proven head coaching experience, has earned an AFC's top seed before with the Tennessee Titans. He's won the division. He's at least got a track record of doing it and being able to handle it, which unfortunately in Gerard Mayo's first season, we kind of learned that he just was inexperienced at being a head coach and having to deal with the media or whatever else might be, the ups and downs of coaching a bad team.
Mm-hmm.
And Vrabel, I don't think, is going to come in and transform this team because this is a personnel thing. But I think it brings them the stability and familiarity that they're seeking. Now, is the whole Patriot way thing going to reemerge here? No, I don't think it's going to. But at least he understands the franchise and knows how to win. They just need to improve the roster to really see that through. I mean, his whole Tennessee tenure got blown up when A.J. Brown got traded and his whole issue with John Robinson back then. So I don't hold that against him. but it felt like the most obvious hire we were going to see in this cycle. So at least it's out of the way.
Your thoughts on the Patriot way, Patrick Claybon?
Oh, the Patriot way is the reason that Mike Vrabel is the head coach. The Patriot way had nothing to do with anything. It's a myth. The Patriots had good players, and
It is a myth. Bill Belichick, to Patrick's credit, always says there is no such thing.
Like Mike Vrabel stepped up to the microphone. He didn't do a Belichick impersonation. He wasn't weird. There weren't like scoldings over what the media was wearing, like one former coach did. There wasn't any of the weird Josh McDaniels tenure. Mike Vrabel was Mike Vrabel, and so I think this isn't a step backwards. It's actually a step forward to what the Patriots probably could have been. 4
That's
or 5
fair.
years ago.
And if dealing with the media was a weakness for Mayo, if anything, I feel like Vrabel's too cozy with the media.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of the thing that annoys me
Unless
about
you're
him.
certain writers in Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean,
Well.
can you be too cozy with the media there?
Maybe it's
Like,
that's fair.
I mean, they'll support him if that's the case.
Maybe it's
We've seen how it can go otherwise.
it's more the media that annoys me when they play favorites. Like, there's just always those coaches that play the media game behind the scenes, and it's just so transparent. Jeff Fisher was the king at it. Cliff Kingsbury is a strong guy at it, certainly. And Vrabel is that guy, but doesn't mean he's a bad guy. Certainly doesn't mean he's a bad coach. I think they were very good on the details. The thing that I worry about is I would like to have a coach with a clear schematic advantage that he brings to the table, something defining. Now, we're seeing a lot of coaches that are really succeeding that aren't in the play caller model, like John Harbaugh and Dan Campbell. And so that's a fair point. And even Mike Tomlin, in a way, maybe his best juice is running the entire organization. Although I think Mike Tomlin kind of combines both, which is what you want. Mike Vrabel, I don't really know. Like, his defenses were up and down. It stunk when he was a coordinator in Houston. Some of his offenses were great and efficient with Tannehill, but he also hired Tim Kelly and Todd Downing as his last two offensive coordinators. So that I don't know what you're getting, but in terms of running an entire organization, kind of being a little more detail-oriented in terms of game management and stuff like that, with the players and the coaches, I feel like he'll raise the floor quite a bit for them.
I don't think there's any question that he's going to bring a more, just the mentality that he brought. I just thought that Gerard Mayo from the start just dropped the ball with some of the comments he was making in the preseason, and then it just kept going downhill from there. And I think that's where they're trying to look. I thought it was interesting that they fired Mayo 3 days after Vrabel interviewed with the Jets.
Yeah.
Just a little jab there, right?
Oh yeah.
Can't let him go there.
This was all choreographed, which is frustrating. I think if you want the Rooney Rule to be respected, if even as a Patriots fan, like, you want them to consider all possible options, like a Ben Johnson even. I think Ben Johnson was like a sham interview. Like, it's just,
I think so.
which is too, like, it was just from the reporting that was there, and it's from really strong people, Greg Bedard, Tom Curran. They were saying things like 90+% the whole time. They were saying that literally before any of this was happening. So it was always happening, and maybe it'll be good. It should definitely help their 2025 like win-loss record, which is the idea. Maybe I shouldn't be whining about it. I want to see what the offensive coordinator is. If it winds up being Josh McDaniels, I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
Let's get Josh McDaniels back in there. Get the gang back together, Greg. What's Bill doing?
What's Patricia doing?
The only he's down with Bill, right?
That's
I think so.
Thank you.
That's going to go great.
Yeah, that is too. And you already hear that he's bringing in his GM candidate that isn't necessarily going to be the GM because Elliot Wolf will still be there, but maybe he'll be over Elliot Wolf. And that was a problem for Vrabel back there. And I don't want all this like palace intrigue and source-offs and all of that. But
palace intrigue in New England?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. Before we go, and we appreciate everyone listening to two shows with us this weekend. I do want to let you know how you can contribute to the American Red Cross relief effort. Obviously, it's been a really difficult week with the wildfires across the greater LA region. Families affected by those fires do need support, and you can help the American Red Cross respond help people recover from the disasters. Donate today to support the relief efforts by going to redcross.org/NFL. And yeah, I know people, because I know they've reached out in my life wanting to know, and it's so crazy how quickly everything changes, and how this fire is going. Saturday, it was moving like down the 405, it's moving east, and it was moving south. It was moving away basically from where I was. And the strength of this fire it changed dramatically between Thursday and Friday night. Was getting to be really scary. And then Saturday, like, it was my son's birthday this weekend, and we wanted to go up to take him to his favorite card store and go buy some cards. And I'm driving back on the 405 past it, and it's a crazy world we're living in. And you can just see this incredibly huge fire right to your right, and everyone else is just like going about their day because they say it's safe to drive there. And then by Sunday, it was, I think, the most positive day that we've had this whole time. The Palisades fire is under better control than it's been this whole time, and things are really looking up in the short term. So that is really good. But Tuesday is supposed to bring like more wind, like a crazy wind event, and it could all start up in different places in the city. And it's been a lot to deal with, Patrick. Obviously stressful for so many people that are affected much more than we are.
Yeah, and absolutely. And there's resources. Gonna put some out. If you're listening, just scroll back on Blue Sky and Twitter. Still some volunteers needed if you're looking in the LA area, several different spots. There's a Google Doc going around that we'll be able to share. But just a thanks going out to all the firefighters, including the 30% of whom are incarcerated, out there with shovels, digging literally to prevent fire spread, and rescue workers. Just by name, everybody out that's bringing clothes, food, finding places for cats and dogs. Really just our little adopted hometown here.
I know. I love LA, and it's such a big place. It's hard to put your arms around it, and yet it can feel almost small in a situation like this. And everywhere I go here, I see a lot of lines to donate around me, because I'm in Santa Monica, which is right next to the Palisades there, and a lot of people trying to help and coming together as a community. And yeah, shout out to Mexico for sending up a bunch of firefighters. Like, I saw him go by. I was like, there we go. Like, we're getting it done. Like, as we move forward into this week, we can just only hope that it continues to get better, and everyone stays safe. And we're just hoping for the best. It's all we can do. And Shook, I'll be back with you on Monday night. Thank you, Kevin Patra.
Thanks for having me, guys.
For stopping by. Come on,
Beautiful.
do this
in
more.
Studio.
Natural.
Yeah, just fly out just for this.
Silver.
I know,
Patrick getting flued out.
Silver Fox here. Look, we're down to only one game left in Wild Card Weekend. Football is back. Give us a good one, Vikings and Rams.